Okay, let's unpack this. Today we are strapping in for a deep dive into, well, what might be the most enduring, most contested mystery in modern space exploration.
Hmm.
Our focus is this decades-long search for intelligent life on Mars. And specifically, we're looking at alleged structures, these mind-boggling anomalies, and the persistent, highly controversial claims about how NASA has handled all of it.
We are going straight to the absolute core of the Cydonia mystery. Our goal here is to really synthesize a whole stack of source material. We're talking archival research, satellite imaging analysis, even whistleblower accounts, and, some fringe scientific theory.
And the goal is to give you a full understanding of the claims made by researchers who believe they found evidence of a high-tech Martian civilization.
And subsequently evidence of its violent annihilation.
And we have to begin where the whole controversy began, the face on Mars.
An accidental discovery, really, captured by the Viking mission.
Right. It was July 25th, 1976. One of the NASA scientists, Toby Owen, he was just reviewing images from the Viking 1 orbiter.
Yeah, he was looking at image 35A72, focused on this region called Cydonia.
And Owen, his job was actually to scout for potential landing sites.
Yeah.
And the story goes he had to use a magnifying glass just to confirm what he was seeing.
What emerged from the shadows was, it was undeniable, a massive geological feature, about a mile wide.
A mile wide.
A mile wide, with clear features, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. It had this striking, almost impossible symmetry that immediately suggested, a sculpted monument rather than just a random hill.
And the source is very clear. This wasn't just a solitary finding. Right beside this face, the images showed other complex things.
Formations that look suspiciously like pyramids, ramparts, other large, unnatural geometric structures.
The immediate internal debate at NASA must have been just intense.
Oh, it was. And they did release the photo, and the global reaction was just explosive. It captivated the public imagination almost instantly.
The headlines were just dominated by questions, right? Was this a message left for us? Was it a tomb like the Sphinx?
Or did it have internal chambers? Leading into some vast underground complex. The implications were just staggering.
But that massive public hype was met with this almost instantaneous, really chilling dismissal from NASA.
Within hours, they threw cold water on all the speculation, labeling the structure as nothing more than an optical illusion caused by the angle of the sun.
Just a play of light and shadow on a rough mountain.
And this is where we hit the first major point of contention, the first sign of alleged secrecy. NASA claimed the matter was definitively settled by a second photograph.
Supposedly taken shortly after the first one.
Right, and they said the second photo proved the face just vanished entirely when the sun angle changed. The official line was something like, when we took another picture a few hours later, it all went away.
That's a very strong claim, a complete closure statement. But here's where it gets really interesting for the researchers who, devoted decades to this.
Their analysis suggests that this second definitive disproving photo, it never actually existed, not in the official archives anyway.
What do you mean it never existed?
Well, independent investigators, the ones who went digging through the original Viking data archive, they found that the record showed one image, 35A72, was taken on July 25th. The next possible image over that region was several days later.
Not a few hours later?
Not a few hours later. So when they specifically requested the image that NASA officials were referencing in public to debunk the face, it didn't surface.
So the whole claim that it was just a trick of the light relied on a piece of evidence that, when people went looking for it, was suspiciously absent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that fact alone, according to those researchers, was the first major red flag, the first sign of deliberate information control. If it's just a pile of rocks, why misrepresent the evidence so quickly?
This is a very modern problem, this idea that you can control public reaction by citing data that isn't there.
Exactly. But this fascination with intelligent structures on Mars, of course, this is centuries old. We have to quickly connect this to the historical context.
Oh, absolutely. The ancient Greeks and Egyptians, they saw Mars as a deity. But the modern obsession with Martian intelligence really kicks off in the late 19th century.
You have to nod to 1877 and the Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli. He's looking through his telescope and he sees these strange lines on the Martian surface. He called them canali.
Now, in Italian, canali just means channels or grooves. It's a natural descriptor.
But the media, especially in the English-speaking world, they completely misinterpreted it. They translated canali as canals.
Implying they were engineered.
Yeah.
Waterways built by an intelligent, organized civilization.
And this one translation error fueled almost global speculation for decades. The idea was that Mars was home to this struggling but sophisticated society trying to channel water from the poles to survive.
And that speculation, driven by misinterpreted data, was the dominant public view of Mars right up until the space age.
It's crucial context. When NASA found the face in 1976, the public was, in a way, already primed to believe, based on a 100-year-old misunderstanding, that Mars had once been inhabited.
So let's jump into the space age, which at first delivered a pretty powerful dose of reality. The search for Martian life got off to a very disappointing start.
Specifically with the Mariner 4 mission in 1965.
Mariner 4 was, a technological success, but for people hoping for Martians, it was an observational disappointment.
It only sent back 22 close-up images, and those visuals revealed a Mars that was just cold, harsh, and heavily pockmarked with craters.
No canals, no cities, nothing.
It looked, frankly, exactly like the moon. It looked dead.
And that created this prevailing scientific perception that Mars was always dead. But the source material is very clear. This perception, it just contradicts the fundamental geological evidence.
This is so essential to understanding the stakes of the Cydonia mystery. We know for a fact Mars was once a genuine blue planet.
It had vast oceans, enough water to cover the entire planet to a depth of hundreds of feet.
It had flowing rivers, lakes, a thick, warm atmosphere, significant volcanic activity, and crucially, it had a global magnetic field,
Which would have protected that atmosphere from solar radiation.
all the ingredients we currently define as necessary for life were there. It might have been billions of years ago, but for a time, Mars was a living world.
Which brings us to the Viking missions of 75 and 76. This was the flagship program.
Designed to look for microbial life, conduct detailed surface observation. It had two identical spacecraft, Viking 1 and 2. Each one had an orbiter for high-res imaging and a lander for on-the-ground analysis.
And it was the Viking 1 orbiter taking those reconnaissance photos that captured image 35A72. And Toby Owen spotted the face, which, boosted public interest just like NASA had hoped.
But this boost in interest quickly turned into a public relations nightmare for them. And it leads directly to what researchers consider the most suspicious operational decision of the entire Viking program.
The landing site controversy.
Exactly.
I mean, logically, if you're planning to land a sophisticated, incredibly expensive scientific probe, you land it where the most interesting features are.
And Cydonia, the site of the face and all those surrounding formations, was the top contender for the Viking 2 lander.
It had flat terrain, good visibility, and scientifically intriguing features. I mean, even if you officially dismissed the face as a natural mesa, the other geological formations nearby were still unique.
But then, just days after the face photo was released, Viking 2 was suddenly rerouted,
They didn't just move it slightly. They sent it to a place called Utopia Planitia.
which is described in the sources as a barren, rocky, and just far less promising region.
One frustrated scientist on the mission was actually quoted comparing the decision to, and I love this quote, landing in the Sahara Desert and expecting to find a garden.
It was so scientifically counterintuitive. If your objective is discovery, why abandon the most intriguing target you have?
That quote just perfectly captures the cognitive dissonance of it. If NASA truly believed the face was just an unimportant trick of light, why take the massive operational risk of changing the landing site at the last minute?
And specifically avoiding that one area of interest.
Exactly.
And this behavior really is the bedrock of the cover-up claims. The independent researchers argued that NASA wasn't avoiding a rock.
They were avoiding the possibility of the lander's high-resolution cameras confirming the artificial nature of the Cydonia structures.
Which would have validated all that public excitement and forced a complete paradigm shift in space priorities.
Okay, so let's move past that initial image of the face and look at the wider context of the Cydonia region. Because the researchers who kept investigating were convinced the face wasn't a standalone statue.
That's right. The fundamental logic they were using was archaeological. On Earth, whether you're looking at the Great Sphinx, the Mayan pyramids, structures in Mesopotamia, these massive monuments are never built in isolation.
They're always part of these sprawling planned complexes, town squares, monumental avenues, that sort of thing.
So if an ancient Martian culture built one giant humanoid head, they probably built other things nearby.
And the high-resolution reanalysis of those Viking images seemed to confirm this. Researchers found an entire cluster of formations they nicknamed the City Square.
aligned in seemingly purposeful patterns.
Yeah.
And they also identified an object they dubbed the fortress, which looked exactly like the remains of a collapsed, massive, man-made pyramid structure.
But the most compelling evidence for deliberate construction, according to the imaging experts, is what they call the DNM pyramid.
It's named after the NASA imaging scientists who studied it, Vince DiPietro and Greg Molinar. And this structure, it isn't just large, it completely redefines monumental scale.
The DNM pyramid is a gargantuan five-sided structure. It towers 1.5 miles tall.
1.5 miles. To give you some context, the Great Pyramid of Giza is about 481 feet tall.
So the DNM pyramid is 3 times the height of the largest Egyptian pyramid. Its sheer mass challenges our current understanding of structural engineering, even on a planet with lower gravity.
But the size is actually secondary to the geometry. The key architectural detail, the one that makes the natural formation hypothesis just collapse, is its symmetry.
And the sources emphasize this. This object is symmetrical around 2 different axes.
Unpack that for us, because bilateral symmetry in one direction, like an animal's body, that can happen naturally. But symmetry across 2 separate lines of sight in a 5-sided object, that sounds like intentional design.
It absolutely does. Imagine you cut the pyramid in half from top to bottom. You get a perfect mirror image. That's one axis.
Okay.
Now, if you cut it in half perpendicular to that first line, across the widest point, you get another separate line of perfect symmetry. This means the overall shape, the 5 distinct faces, the angles of its sides, they were all calibrated to balance perfectly on 2 independent planes.
Random geological uplift, tectonic folding, wind erosion, volcanic flows. They just do not produce that kind of precise multi-axis pentagonal geometry on a 1.5 mile scale.
Right.
It defies basic geomorphology.
So to lend some professional credence to these observations, the researchers eventually consulted a man named Errol Torin.
And Torin was the ideal person for this. He was a professional satellite imaging specialist who worked for the Defense Mapping Agency. His entire career was built on looking at high-res images and determining if the objects were natural formations or artificial structures.
So what was his professional objective conclusion about the Cydonia complex?
It was definitive. Based on his professional criteria, the very criteria used by U.S. intelligence agencies to identify non-natural features here on Earth, his conclusion was that all the objects in the Cydonia region, including the face and especially the DNM pyramid, were, and this is a quote, not of natural origin.
So he didn't just say they were strange, he actively dismissed the possibility of a geological explanation.
Correct. And specifically about the DNM pyramid, he stated that the geomorphic natural hypothesis is thus left with no mechanism that can explain the formation of the DNM pyramid due to its 5-sided shape and its undeniable bilateral symmetry.
He was so confident in the structure's artificiality that he actually called the DNM pyramid the Rosetta Stone of Mars,
Implying it held the key to deciphering the entire Martian history.
And this narrative of artificial structures doesn't just end at Cydonia. Over the last 50 years, you have data from Mariner, Viking, Mars, Global Surveyor, Opportunity, Curiosity, thousands of images.
And the researchers cataloging these images claim that Cydonia is just the highest profile example of a planet-wide pattern of highly unusual objects.
Which is a critical point. If Cydonia was the only anomaly, the pareidolia argument would be a lot stronger.
But when you look at the global evidence, you see technology and architecture that just boggles the imagination. Let's start with the monoliths.
We're talking about structures so large, they defy any terrestrial comprehension. There's that famous image of an extremely tall, almost perfectly rectangular monolith standing on the surface.
But then there's the second one, which puts the first one to shame.
The second monolith is what captured the attention of researchers like Hoagland's team in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Based on parallax measurements from the imaging, this single rectangular structure stands over 10 miles high.
10 miles.
10 miles. If that were on Earth, commercial airliners fly at 6 to 7 miles up, you'd have jets flying beneath its summit.
And you should care about a giant space rock because the physics required to keep something 10 miles tall stable, even on a planetary surface, it just drastically alters our understanding of gravitational engineering and the materials available to that civilization.
It implies construction materials far superior to anything we possess.
Exactly. And the sources say that when these images, which were initially captured by the Mars Global Surveyor, were presented by independent researchers, NASA's response was immediate and dismissive.
Just cliffs or shadows.
Despite the clear, angular, uneroded rectangular profile, the pattern of immediate dismissal is just repeated over and over again across various missions.
So, moving beyond the monumental, we see alleged evidence of technology in ruins. There's this structure nicknamed the shipwreck.
Which looks like the fractured angular remains of a huge boat or maybe the foundation of a collapsed engineered structure. It's totally distinct from the surrounding soil.
And thanks to the modern rovers, the anomalies just keep coming. In May 2022, the Curiosity rover captured an image that looks undeniably like a doorway carved in the rock face.
Skeptics jump to natural explanations like fissures or exfoliation.
Of course.
But the clean, right-angled geometry of that opening is highly suspect to independent analysts, like the European Space Agency contractor who first flagged the image.
And what about the scale of machinery implied by some of the surface features? The sources mention these giant tracks that are visible in high-resolution orbital images.
Yeah, these are marks that would require huge construction vehicles or equipment far larger than anything we've ever sent to Mars.
To leave imprints on that scale.
Then you have the more subtle anomalies like the Martian totem pole captured by Curiosity in 2015. While wind erosion is a powerful force on Mars, creating features that are just so difficult to explain by simple, random, natural forces.
The shape is too complex, too balanced.
It suggests selective resistance that almost mimics architectural construction.
Arthur C. Clarke famously dubbed other surface features glass worms.
Right. He was referring to images showing these domes or the tops of spheres, which led to speculation about ancient encapsulated cities or habitats that might have survived the atmospheric collapse.
And there's even alleged evidence of dynamic motion. A series of still images from the Opportunity rover showed an orb of light moving across the landscape.
And the official explanation tried to claim it was a dead pixel.
But independent analysts quickly pointed out the object was visibly larger than a single pixel, and its location shifted across multiple sequential frames. So a simple sensor error is impossible.
For me, though, the most tangible, almost irrefutable evidence of ancient mechanics might have been captured by the Opportunity rover's microscopic imager.
This close-up photo showed what looks exactly like the imprint of a valve or maybe a section of a large gear just pressed into the Martian soil.
I mean, think about the physics of that. How could a perfect imprint of a complex mechanical shape, not a simple circle or oval, be formed naturally in the soil and then captured by a microscopic lens?
It strongly suggests that a metallic, engineered object was just resting there long enough to leave its physical impression before it was eroded or buried.
And all these global anomalies, found by different people across multiple missions, they all indicate that the Cydonia ruins are part of a massive, planet-wide, failed civilization.
So given the increasing weight of all these anomalies, the scientific mandate should have been to rigorously investigate Cydonia.
But instead, the narrative detailed in our source material, it focuses on this long antagonistic battle against NASA, centering on deliberate image manipulation and alleged fraud.
And this begins with the detailed work of those two imaging scientists, Vince DiPietro and Greg Molinar. They were so dissatisfied with NASA's quick dismissal that they used their archival access to hunt for the original 1976 image.
They eventually found the original high-resolution photo, and it had been curiously misfiled in the Viking archives simply under the name Head. And when they performed a rigorous photometric analysis, they found two things. First, the face had far more going on than just shadow. And second, they located that supposedly non-existent second photo.
The photo that was supposed to prove the face vanished.
Exactly. They found it. And ironically, it didn't disprove a thing. This second photo, taken in different lighting, actually showed more detail and less shadow.
And their structural analysis of the face's base revealed two parallel, straight sides, hundreds of yards long, supporting the structure, and curved top and bottom edges with the same radius.
They concluded it sat on a symmetrical framed platform, and their high-res enhancement even suggested they could detect the remnant of a pupil in the left eye socket, which was visible in the better light.
So when NASA dismissed these internal findings, the researchers went public.
And this is when the science journalist Richard Hoagland stepped in. He recognized the public and political significance of the findings and organized an independent research team,
Bringing in experts like Dr. Mark Carlotto, a specialist in computer imaging.
And Carlotto's enhancement techniques were, state-of-the-art for the time. He confirmed the geometric patterns, even showing what looked like teeth in the mouth area and a precise stripe pattern on the frame of the structure itself.
So Hoagland then tried to engage the scientific establishment directly. He secured a briefing with Dr. Carl Sagan.
And Hoagland claims Sagan was visibly impressed during the private briefing, even acknowledging the geometric impossibility of some of the structures.
But then, shortly after the meeting, Sagan completely pivoted. He publicly attacked the face theory in major newspapers, on television, reinforcing the official narrative of pareidolia.
It's a classic example of the establishment circle closing ranks.
But Hoagland didn't back down. He leveraged the most powerful anti-establishment media platform of the 1990s, Coast to Coast AM, hosted by Art Bell.
That show was crucial. Art Bell had a massive, highly engaged, dedicated audience, millions of listeners. And Hoagland successfully used this platform to generate massive public pressure,
Letter-writing campaigns, call-in floods.
demanding that NASA, which was using taxpayer dollars, finally take new high-resolution pictures of the face and the pyramids at Cydonia.
And the public outcry worked. In 1993, NASA launched the Mars Observer. They had initially planned to send it without a capable camera.
But due to the political pressure from the coast-to-coast movement, they were forced to include a powerful imaging system, ostensibly to settle the debate once and for all.
The controversy really reached a peak just 3 days before the Mars Observer was scheduled to insert itself into Martian orbit.
NASA's lead project scientist, Dr. Bevan French, agreed to debate Hoagland on Good Morning America.
And the sources indicate the debate was just disastrous for NASA's public credibility. Hoagland relentlessly pressed the simple question, why won't NASA guarantee they will specifically target and photograph Cydonia?
And Dr. French just repeatedly failed to provide a satisfactory answer. Even the show's hosts started to question NASA's evasion.
And get this, the timing here absolutely solidified the conspiracy claims. Less than 5 minutes after that contentious national debate aired, NASA announced they had lost all contact with the Mars Observer.
Completely gone.
5 years of work, billions of dollars, and the potential resolution of the greatest Martian mystery. It vanished just minutes after the public demanded accountability.
And this event was immediately followed by leaks. Insiders, presumably disgruntled NASA employees or contractors, they allegedly contacted Hoagland,
Claiming the observer was still functioning, still taking pictures.
But if NASA released images confirming artificiality, they would have been forced to fundamentally alter their entire space program mandate. Declaring the probe lost was the only way to avoid the political disaster.
And regardless of whether the leak was true, the public perception was set. NASA lost the probe on purpose.
So 5 years later, the Mars Global Surveyor launched. Public pressure hadn't dissipated, and NASA was again forced to agree to take pictures of the face.
And the result, which was released on April 5th, 1998, was immediately dubbed the cat box image by Art Bell's audience.
It was a grainy, noise-filled, almost incomprehensible mess, taken in bad lighting and filtered beyond recognition. NASA claimed it proved the face was just a natural, jumbled mesa.
But this is where the technical claims of fraud become explicit. A NASA contractor named Land Fleming, who had access to the imaging tools, he later tried to reproduce the image NASA released.
And his conclusion was that he could only create that specific, murky, low-contrast image by applying a staggering 14 different filters in Photoshop.
14. So the allegation isn't that NASA accidentally took a bad picture?
The allegation is that this was a crude but very effective fraud. The sources claim JPL deliberately removed the original tonal variation from the image data.
To explain tonal variation simply, when you look at an object, the subtle changes in light and shadow, the tones, that's what allows your brain to perceive its 3D shape, its depth, its curvature.
So by removing that subtle variation, the structure looks flat and undefined.
And then, they allegedly added false visual cues, noise, exaggerated speckling, a rough texture.
All to simulate natural, random roughness and erosion. The result was an image designed to be just convincing enough to satisfy the public mandate while deliberately masking the underlying precise geometric shape that DiPietro, Molinar, and Carlotto had all identified.
The conclusion drawn by these independent analysts is that this was inexcusable misconduct, designed solely to deceive the public and permanently bury the Cydonia mystery.
And the claims of image manipulation, or the cover-up, they extend even beyond the face itself. It touches on the very aesthetics of Mars, specifically the color of the Martian sky.
This is the orange haze deception. For years, every official color image of Mars was dominated by this weird, uniform orange or reddish haze.
And NASA's claim was that this was a function of the red dust kicked up everywhere, mixed with the carbon dioxide atmosphere.
But chemically, that explanation always faced skepticism. While Mars would never have a deep blue sky like Earth's, a CO2 atmosphere, when it's clean, should result in a grayish blue or at least a pale azure hue.
Not the consistent, deep reddish green shown in those initial photographs.
So independent researchers posited that the images were intentionally run through an orange or red color filter before public release to make the surface look maximally alien and hostile.
The motive was simple: discourage public enthusiasm for manned missions. If Mars looks like a weird, uninhabitable orange void, people are less likely to fund or demand we go there.
And what's so compelling is how modern software definitively exposed this filtering. Today, digital photography programs like Photoshop have an autocolor function.
Right, and this function detects if a uniform color cast or a filter has been applied to an image, and it automatically removes it, balancing the whites and grays.
So when analysts applied this autocolor correction to these early orange-dominated images, the transformation was immediate and dramatic.
The images just snapped back to reality, showing a blue-gray sky and varied, natural-looking colors in the landscapes and rocks. This confirmed the suspicion of a consistent, deliberate, and planetary-scale color filter application.
And it's worth noting that NASA eventually abandoned this tactic.
Hmm.
Modern, officially released photographs like those from the latest rovers, they do now show the pale, blue-gray Martian sky.
Which inadvertently validates the claims of earlier color manipulation.
This brings us to the ultimate terrifying question. If Mars was once a blue planet, potentially teeming with life, and if the Cydonia complex and other global structures are indeed the ruins of a highly sophisticated intelligent society,
Then what apocalyptic force wiped it all out?
and this transitions us directly into the most provocative theory linked to the Mars anomalies, the nuclear war hypothesis.
Championed by Dr. John Brandenburg, a former NASA physicist who specialized in plasma physics and propulsion technology.
Brandenburg's work began after the Curiosity rover landed in 2012. While Curiosity was looking for evidence of water and organic compounds, Brandenburg focused on the unexpected chemical analysis of the Martian topsoil.
He found evidence of a massive nuclear event.
Specifically, the analysis revealed a huge, anomalous amount of xenon-129 deposited globally in the upper layer of Martian soil. We have to pause here because this is the most technical, but also the most crucial piece of evidence in the entire theory.
Absolutely. Xenon is a heavy, noble gas that exists in several stable isotopes. Xenon-129 is the key.
So while certain isotopes of xenon can be created by slow, natural radioactive decay deep underground.
Like we see at the Natural Fission Reactor at Gabon on Earth, yeah.
Right, but xenon-129 is known primarily as a specific telltale fission product of a rapid nuclear explosion.
When you detonate a nuclear weapon splitting heavy atoms like uranium-235 or plutonium-239 in a rapid chain reaction, it generates a massive amount of specific isotopes. And the concentration and the specific ratio of xenon-129 found on the surface of Mars strongly matches the spectral signature left behind by a thermonuclear reaction.
Not a slow geological process.
Exactly, and the quantity is just staggering. We've conducted over 1,000 nuclear tests on Earth over 70 years, and we have background levels of xenon-129. On Mars, the levels are 2.5 times higher than those on Earth.
2.5 times higher.
And it's a signature deposited globally across the entire surface.
So Dr. Brandenburg, who had attended the Sagan briefing and understood the political dynamics, he presented this data to nuclear weapons experts who were independent of NASA.
And they affirmed that the high concentration of xenon-129 was definitively a nuclear weapon signature. There's no known natural non-fission process that could create this much of this specific xenon isotope deposited globally on the surface.
And the scale of destruction implied is truly mind-bending.
Brandenburg estimated the explosion required to create this global deposition would have been equivalent to 1,000 megatons. This is an energy release equivalent to a structure the size of the Empire State Building being converted entirely into energy.
To really drive home that scale, the bomb dropped on Hiroshima was about 20 kilotons. We are talking about an event 50,000 times more powerful.
And this catastrophic event is what Brandenburg suggests provides the perfect explanation for the sudden and complete loss of Mars's thick, life-sustaining atmosphere, transforming it into the cold, arid planet we see today.
And he found a deeply disturbing geographical connection. He located two distinct high-radiation hotspots on the Martian surface, areas where radioactive residue was still heavily concentrated.
And crucially, Cydonia, the region of the face and the DNM pyramid, is located directly between these two hotspots. It suggests Cydonia was the target, or at least the epicenter of the destruction.
The timeline for this apocalypse is estimated to be incredibly ancient, somewhere between 150 to 300 million years ago.
But this timeline and the location of the ruins is where the theory takes that final, highly speculative, but necessary turn.
If the builders of the Cydonia complex were an Iron Age civilization, as some analysts interpret the ruins, suggesting stone carving capability but maybe not global spaceflight, they certainly would not have possessed the technology to create a devastating 1,000 megaton nuclear weapon.
Which leads to the core implication of the nuclear war hypothesis. The weapons were detonated by someone else
A hostile external force.
that targeted the budding or established civilization at Cydonia and essentially sandblasted the planet's atmosphere and surface with a thermonuclear strike.
So the question then becomes who?
Well, the source material notes that 150 to 300 million years ago, the most advanced forms of life on Earth were early reptiles. Dinosaurs hadn't even evolved yet. Perhaps Earth's primitive ecosystem was deemed inconsequential or too underdeveloped to warrant interference.
And this leads to that final existential speculation. If intelligent life on Mars reached an advanced structured level, and if they were annihilated by a massive external force, maybe a small technologically advanced group of these humanoids, the Martians managed to escape.
Escape off-world just before the catastrophe. And who were those Martians that escaped annihilation?
That's the terrifying philosophical leap that some researchers make, that the remnants of the Martian civilization fled to a primitive planet Earth and became the seed of our own human civilization.
Making the search for the face not merely archaeology, but a crucial examination of humanity's true origin story.
This narrative is just, it's extraordinary, and it demands a careful, critical review. We have to return to the most powerful counterargument used by the mainstream scientific community.
And that counterargument is still dominated by one word: pareidolia.
It's the hardwired human tendency to find meaningful patterns, especially faces, in random unstructured stimuli. The argument is that the human brain evolved to quickly recognize faces for survival, and on Mars, that instinct is simply misfiring when it's viewing a shadowed mesa.
And the evidence for it is strong. The face on Mars is often cited as the prime example of pareidolia. Our sources confirm that if you look up the concept on Wikipedia, the picture of the Cydonia face is frequently the primary image used to explain the phenomenon.
And if that were the only piece of evidence, or if the history were clean, that argument would probably satisfy the scientific inquiry.
But the actions detailed in our source material introduce these serious chronic trust issues with the primary source of the information, which is NASA and JPL.
The sources acknowledge that NASA publicly defends its use of artists on staff to Photoshop images. They claim it's necessary for visual appeal or contrast correction or to make complex data digestible for the public.
But there are specific examples of manipulation that independent researchers claim cross the line from artistic enhancement to active concealment.
Beyond the cat box image we discussed, researchers found alleged evidence of copy-pasting cloud formations in Earth observation photos. And more troublingly, there are claims regarding images allegedly taken by the Curiosity rover on Mars that bear an uncanny resemblance to specific locations on Devon Island.
Devon Island is an uninhabited island in Nunavut, Canada, where NASA routinely trains astronaut crews and tests rover prototypes because the terrain is remarkably Mars-like.
And the accusation is potent? That photos taken on Earth, specifically on Devon Island during rover field tests, were slipped into the public feed and presented as Mars images, possibly with an orange filter applied to Martianize them.
And if a federal agency is demonstrably faking the location or copy-pasting visual elements, it fundamentally destroys trust in every single image they subsequently release, regardless of the target.
And this is why figures like Richard Hoagland, despite all the attacks on his credibility from skeptics who accused him of exaggeration and sensationalism, he still performed an essential service.
He acted as the public's relentless watchdog.
His campaign was not just fringe noise, it was political activism. He successfully engaged millions of regular people in the space program, and he influenced public policy.
Because of the political pressure he organized, NASA was forced to include cameras and eventually take pictures of Cydonia that they otherwise would never have taken, just to try and put the controversy to bed. The public needs watchdogs with influence to ensure transparency.
Let's briefly revisit Dr. Brandenburg's nuclear theory, just for balance. It's important to note that his hypothesis evolved over time.
His earliest work, citing the Gabon uranium mine, suggested that the xenon-129 could have resulted from a natural nuclear event, a slow geological fission process.
But the crucial shift in his theory, following his consultation with nuclear weapons experts, was the realization that the high volume and specific isotopic ratios were inconsistent with a slow geological process.
He concluded the signature could only be explained by the intentional, massive discharge of a weapon.
And while his ultimate theory was rejected for peer review by many mainstream science journals, often citing insufficient data or the sensational nature of the claim, the source material argues that the specificity of the chemical finding, the xenon-129, it deserves rigorous study, not instant ridicule.
Particularly given the historical context of image control.
And this brings us back to the unavoidable, central question that perfectly encapsulates the entire decades-long controversy. NASA claims the face is nothing more than an eroded pile of rocks, an artifact of natural pareidolia.
And therefore not worth the substantial resources required to send a rover there.
So if that is truly the case, if NASA's 100% certain there's nothing artificial there, why have they spent 5 decades avoiding the region?
The question of resources belongs to the people, and the people have repeatedly demanded closure on this issue. The simplest, most effective way for NASA to regain public trust, eliminate all the conspiracy theories permanently, and settle a 50-year-old debate
Would be to dedicate one rover, one time, to roll right up to Cydonia.
Send the rover there. Take indisputable, close-up, undoctored, high-resolution photographs of the face and the DNM pyramid. End the debate.
The only reason not to, according to the researchers, is the unacceptable yet persistent risk that such images might actually confirm the artificial engineered nature of the structures.
And thereby validate the claims of past cover-ups and require a complete and terrifying rewrite of cosmic history.
So we have taken a deep dive into centuries of Mars fascination, the initial shock of the face discovery, the geometrically impossible architecture of the Cydonia complex, and global structures like those 10-mile-high monoliths.
We've thoroughly examined the explicit claims of fraud regarding the deliberate filtering of the cat box image and the blue sky color manipulation, which sought to make Mars seem maximally alien.
And we discussed the profound implications of Dr. Brandenburg's Xenon-129 evidence, which, if interpreted as a fission product from a rapid reaction, points toward a planetary nuclear war that wiped out a sophisticated Martian civilization 150 to 300 million years ago.
The story of the face on Mars and the associated structures, it will persist indefinitely until we get that single, crucial set of data. The debate over its artificiality will never end without close-up, trusted, undoctored photographs of the Cydonia region.
And while the chances of artificiality might be almost zero, as the skeptics maintain, almost zero isn't zero. If those monuments were built by an ancient civilization, whether they were our ancestors or not, they deserve to be remembered. And their history deserves to be recovered.
So we leave you with this final provocative thought. Considering the strong evidence of a past blue planet, the geometrically complex structures, and that unmistakable Xenon-129 nuclear signature, what single piece of information, if proven true tomorrow, a confirmed photo of the DNM pyramid's 5-sided geometry, or definitive proof of the nuclear war's external origin, what would change your view of humanity's origin story the most? What is the breaking point for your understanding of our place in the cosmos? We'll see you next time.